Chapter 2. As the obscured sun rose over the land, casting a soft, weak glow over Willow's home, I made my way to the Hitching Brook, a local diner that Darwin had recommended. The sign above the door creaked in the morning breeze, and the smell of fresh coffee beckoned me inside. When I entered, I found the place was sparsely populated. Only a few people sat at their tables, their conversations hushed as they turned to look at me, the stranger in town. I walked to the counter and took a seat. Behind the counter, a woman was wiping down the already spotless surface. She glanced up as I sat down, her eyes curious yet cautious. I ordered a coffee, and as she poured it, I decided to break the ice. "I heard this place is the most popular place in town," I said, looking around at all the empty tables. "Why isn't it full?" She smiled faintly, glancing out the window at the still rising sun. "It's early in the morning. Most folks stay inside until the sun has fully cleared the trees. That's when they feel safer. Safe enough to leave their houses, that is." "Safe from what, would you say?" I asked, leaning in slightly, already having a slight idea of what she might say. She lowered her voice, her expression growing serious. "The disappearances, the killings. People around here seem to believe the daylight protects them." The weight of her words hung in the air between us, adding to the already ominous atmosphere of this town. I took a sip of my coffee, the warmth doing little to dispel the chill that had settled over me. "So, has anyone new visited town ever since the recent murders started?" I asked, hoping to gather more information. She glanced around, ensuring no one else was within earshot before speaking. "Well, there is a family. Seem to remember they moved in not long before this started. Maybe 8 months, I'd say. Never seen them myself, but I'm told they're of the quiet sort. Keep to themselves mostly." "Anything unusual about them?" I pressed. She shrugged slightly, but I could see the tension in her posture. "No troublemakers, if that's what you're asking. But from what I hear, they're particular. Don't let the kids mix. Don't attend church or gatherings. Not sure what their problem is." Intrigued, I leaned forward. "What's the name of this family?" She glanced around again, lowering her voice again slightly even more. "Dralloc, I think." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a unique name." She nodded. Not one I've heard before." She folded the cloth over in her hand. "Doesn't sound local, does it? Sounds old." Her words sparked an interest in me. As I stepped out of the diner, the sun had risen higher, the name Dralloc lingering in my mind like a shadow. Determined to learn more, I decided my next stop would be the local library. With its rich yet eerie history, was bound to have records that could shed some light on this enigmatic family. As I walked to the library, the sun climbed higher, and the streets were beginning to show signs of life, a stark contrast from the previous day. The town still carried an air of suspicion and fear, but now I was more determined than ever to uncover its secrets. The library was an old, imposing building with heavy wooden doors. Inside, it was quiet, the only sound being the hum of the air conditioning. I approached the librarian, an elderly woman with keen eyes behind thick glasses. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm looking for information on a family that moved here around 8 months ago. The Drallocs, I believe." The librarian's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Drallocs, you say?" "Yes. I was told they might have some connection to the strange occurrences in town." The librarian nodded slowly. You might find some information in the town archives. Follow me. I followed her through rows of tall bookshelves, filled with dusty tomes and yellowing pages. We reached a back room, a small space crammed with old newspapers, documents, and bound volumes. The air was thick with the musty scent of history. She left me there alone with the echoes of the past. I started sifting through the records, my fingers tracing the edges of brittle papers and faded photographs. Hours passed as I delved into the town's history, each piece of information a puzzle piece slowly falling into place. Finally, I stumbled upon an old newspaper article dated 1973. The headline read, "Mysterious deaths and disappearances plague Willow's Hollow." My heart began to race as I read on. The article detailed a series of unsolved mysteries, a string of disappearances and bizarre deaths. Locals believe a mysterious family could be connected, all eerily similar to the ones of the present day. As I folded the article, something caught my eye. Another article, dated 1963, with a similar headline. My heart dropped as I began to read, finding once again eerie similarities to the 1973 article. Another string of mysterious deaths and disappearances. Locals fear the family of the Drellock estate could be connected. A sense of dread settled over me as I continued to search. More articles emerged, each one a decade apart. 1953, 1943, 33, all the way to the early 19th century. Each detailed the same haunting pattern of unexplained deaths and disappearances. Realization hit me like a cold wave. These events, Darwin was right. They were happening every 10 years. The weight of this discovery sank in as I leaned back, the chill of the library's air conditioning doing little to dispel the icy fear that had gripped me. The Drellock family had been here in Willow's Hollow for much longer than anyone realized, and their presence seemed to herald a cycle of death and despair. As I folded the last article and put it in my pocket, I felt a presence behind me. Turning, I saw a young woman, possibly in her late 20s, standing there with a curious expression. Her hair was a deep red, her eyes as blue as the sea. "You're looking into the Drellocks?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Do you know anything about them?" She glanced around nervously, her eyes darting to the floor. "Yes, but we cannot speak here. Meet me at the old church down the road at 7 this evening. I know why you're here. There are things you need to know." Before I could ask more, she slipped away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The sun was now beginning to set, casting long, exaggerated shadows that seemed to stretch and twist ominously. The air grew colder, the chill slowly settling into my bones. I left the library, the articles burning a hole in my pocket. I made my way to the old church. The evening air grew thick with anticipation, but it came with a faint sense of dread. The sun was barely looming over the land, casting an eerie, dim light. The shadows grew long and slender, like tendrils of darkness slithering through the land. The warm hues of the day were fading rapidly, replaced by creeping, sinister twilight. The contrast between the day and the eerie, foreboding night couldn't have been clearer. The church was ahead,